this is a crazy world we're in. You're re-recruiting your roster, you're managing NIL, you're managing the portal, more moving parts than most people can even count. How is Mike Elko doing with managing all the chaos that we live with in college football today?
Well, done well. Yeah, did the Aggies lose some guys? Sure. The big names they lost were Walter Nolen, who transferred to Ole Miss, and Evan Stewart transferred to Oregon. There were others. Fidel Diggs went on up to Syracuse. He'd graduated, and the A&M defensive line coach, Eli Robinson, went up to Syracuse as a co-defensive coordinator. So Fidel followed him. So there were others. And so we figured that. But, he's brought in some guys that at areas where they needed to boost depth and quite frankly, get better. And, after the spring, some of those guys are going to leave because they're not going to be probably in starting roles. And they understand that, but they brought in a lot of guys that they're excited about. But mainly they were able to keep some guys. Shemar Turner, who's a guy that we think is going to play in the NFL, was playing really well early. He decided to forego the NFL and come back for a senior season. Shemar Stewart is a guy that was playing really well toward the end of last year. He's a sophomore out of Miami, and there was a lot of thought that he would probably go home. And he's, no, I'm going to stay here. So Bryce Foster is the center that was a highly recruited guy, and he started for a couple of years, decided he was going to come back. Reuben Owens, a 5-star running back from last, he's coming back. So they actually had a lot more guys and bigger names, or as big names, decided to stay and kind of run it back with Elko, then left. But when you lose a guy like Stewart, that was, I think he was in that 2022 recruiting class, was considered the number one receiver, if not one of the top ones. And then Walter Nolen was considered the number one player. So when you lose those guys, that's going to get the attention and what people are going to react to. But really, I think they've done a heck of a job keeping the nucleus of their lineup together. And quite frankly, I think they had championship caliber talent. Not saying that they would, but that caliber. And you saw them last year going into the late in the fourth quarter with a chance to beat Alabama. Late in the fourth quarter with the lead over Ole Miss. Late in the fourth quarter with the lead, or not late, but in the fourth quarter with the lead at Tennessee. In the fourth quarter within a touchdown of Miami, and couldn't close them out. So with some better coaching and a better scheme and some of the things I've heard about, I mentioned earlier that you hear things, people are willing to talk. Well, if some of the things we heard, you're kind of scratching your head and say, man, they were lucky to win 7 games.
Yeah.
So see if they get more organized and better coaching, we'll see if they can, bounce back strong. It's been known to happen. We'll see if it can happen at A&M.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that, they rarely got blown out of games the last 2 years, but losing close only keeps you employed at one team in this league. And so when you don't win games, you're going to be gone. But I go back to media days. You and I were both in the room, I think, when Jimbo Fisher spoke, and it was are you going to let Bobby Petrino run the offense? And he took about 3 minutes to run around the room and back with his answer. And I'm like, why was that not a simple answer? How did that? I mean, I know the narrative is ultimately it's going to be his offense, but some things you just said prompt some questions here.
Yeah, that was the first red flag of this season.
Yeah.
We brought in a guy like Petrino, who has a history of putting explosive offenses out there. And then you say, well, the actual quote was something like, he's going to have input. I'm going to have input. All the coaches are going to have input. And you're like, what? All the coaches are going to have input on the play call? No wonder why you're always getting delay of games.
Yeah.
All stars. Everybody, it just didn't make sense. And you look at that opposite to the way the same question was asked of Eli Drinkwitz And he said, "Oh yeah, I can't even remember their offensive coordinator's name, but I brought him in here. I looked and
It
said,
is Kellen Moore. Yeah.
And he's going to call the plays, and that was it. And look, in A&M did not. They had offensive troubles, and they did not live up to expectations. And Missouri went out and exceeded expectations. And I think so much with A&M, it comes back to, and there's no question, it comes back to coaching. I mean, you look at their talent, and I just said the guys that left, so many people, wanted them.
Yeah.
And there were guys that were, I know for a fact, that were pursued by other programs that decided to stay. So I really don't think talent was the problem. And it's sad because Jimbo started off really, really well here. And the first years, everybody was happy with him. And the fourth year, they gave him a pass because his quarterback got hurt. So he's going with a backup quarterback. And then they lost to Appalachian State in year 5. You're like, okay, this doesn't make a lot of sense. And then they just do the same things over and over. And I was up in the press box with the guy that I'm on the radio with, David Nuno, here in a couple of games. And we were marking. I'm saying, okay, this is going to be a run here. This is going to be, and I got 75. Right. So incredibly predictable. So you're going to bring in Bobby Petrino, and it's like, okay, this is going to be different. They got all these receivers, and it wasn't. So then it became pretty clear that if Bobby Petrino, he may be calling the plays, but they're not his plays.
Yeah.
And we used the Bobby Flay reference again, because we were saying that's like having Bobby Flay come in to cook you a meal, but saying, we want you to cook it, but we're going to give you the ingredients and the recipe, and you cannot go away from, you can't stray from that. It has to be. And it's like, well, then what's the difference?
One of the greatest skills in life is just being able to get out of your own way.
And, I look at what Alabama did last year when they were struggling at quarterback, and they said, all right, Milroe's our guy. Now what we have to do is change our offense for him and figure out what he does best and put him in the best situations for him. And it got to the point where I think Jimbo was like, no, look, this worked for me at Florida State 10 years ago. And so I know it's going to work. And you're like, well, that's like, I always said, that's like the guy who rode the winner of the Kentucky Derby, and 10 years later, he's saying, look, I'm still hitting the horse the same way. I'm still feeding him the same thing. Why isn't he running as fast? It just everybody lost faith in Jimbo and what he was trying to do, because people were trying to tell him it's not working, and he refused to acknowledge it. And one of the worst things that happened to him, in a way, was at the end of the 2022 season. You'll remember they had this terrible season. They were 4-7, and then they go out in the last game against LSU and run up and down the field.
Yeah,
on A-chain. But they run up and down the field, and Jimbo came out into the press box and said, see, I told you, it's just a matter of and you're like,
yeah.
So I think Mike is more open to letting his offensive coordinator coordinate.
I would hope so. All right. When the book is, that was funny. When the book was written, when the book is one day written on the great NIL class of 2022, what's going to be fact? What's going to be fiction?
Well, okay. The first fiction is, nobody wants to hear this. I have friends in the media that I heard even referencing it the other day. And I think it's it's an indictment on today's media. But some guy named Sliced Bread puts out that A&M spent $30 million on their recruiting class. That's preposterous. In fact, the vast majority of that recruiting class was committed even before the NIL was, the Supreme Court ruling. And a big part of it was from Houston. Like, well, there's a shocker that guys from Houston would come to Texas A&M, So that's the number one fallacy. I'm not saying that they weren't active in NIL. They were, just like everybody else was. And they might have even been a little bit ahead of the game. But it wasn't it wasn't even close to the extreme
Yeah.
that they were making it out to be. So that's the number one fallacy. I think what you hear people say that there was a bad culture, and that's absolutely true. And I think they were doing some of the bad culture involved guys that have left to go to other programs. One left and he went to Ole Miss, and he didn't even last at Ole Miss through spring drills. So,
yeah.
So
I remember that one.
And there were others. So I think that was absolutely true. You know, you probably heard the story about at the South Carolina game. There were 4 guys doing the weed vaping in the in their uniforms in the locker room. Well, you know, I once heard, and I don't know how true this is, but I once heard that Dabo Swinney, there's certain guys he wouldn't recruit no matter how talented they were because he just didn't feel like fit the culture. And I think A&M got, and I think Jimbo and A&M got to that point in that year, like, we'll take anybody because we want to have a class, and without saying, well, first of all, do we need 3 tight ends, right? So, but this guy's got he's highly rated, so let's take him. Do you need, is this guy going to be, does he have some baggage or the red flags? Yeah, but let's take him anyway. And, and I think that cost them. And, so when people say that, that they were taking guys no matter what, and they had a bad culture because of it. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think coaches take that into account. And I think it's harder to now because the parts are moving so quickly and you got to move so quickly on players. I don't know how coaches do it.
Well, it is difficult. And I think that's why you get paid a crazy lucrative salary, because you got to deal with headaches. And if it was easy, maybe you wouldn't get paid so much. I don't think I don't see a whole lot of guys, deciding that they don't want to be college football coaches anymore because of it. They get older.
You saw one, but
but I'm not seeing a whole lot. I'm not seeing a mass exodus because, oh gosh, now I have to figure out if this guy is going to be a problem, and everything that goes with college football now. I mean, there's just too much money at stake, and some guys will adapt, and some will adjust, and some will flourish in the new system we have. And those coaches, are going to be the next. Those that adapt are going to be the next wave of great coaches. And everybody down here hopes that Mike Elko is one of them.
What did you make of the infamous Walter Nolen tweet on his way out?
Something about make sure you read your contract.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but that one.
Well, first of all, I think it's great advice.
Yeah.
You're going to get involved with something. Look, I know a couple of guys here, and I'm sure this is something that Walter was, I would assume, because it was kind of cryptic beyond that. So what are you saying? Yeah. But I know of 2 guys that their NIL deal included use of a car. And they went into the transfer portal. And they were surprised to find out that they no longer got the use of the car.
Huh.
Now why would they, right? So, and you know what? Both of them came back to A&M. So they get their, I'm assuming. But, so I don't know, other than, look, I know some of the guys that run the collective, and they're people want to act like they're not, but they're above board. Because I hear guys on nationals, I think it's just lazy, but you can always say, well, A&M.
Yes.
So, even though, I mean, the team I'd be looking at right now is, hey, what's Ohio State doing? Look at all the guys.
When the collective is tweeting, hey, look what we just did.
Right. Yeah. So, but I don't have a problem with it because that's what it is now.
Right.
But I would think that maybe, I'm assuming Walter decided to go into the into the transfer portal, and his deal got cut off.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you better read your whole contract, which is what he said, because maybe it tells you that if you go into the portal, you're going to have your deal is nullified.
Yeah. Funny. Like if you quit working at TexAgs, they might quit paying you.
They probably would.
Yeah.
Probably would.
I'm gonna guess that might happen.